Hailing from the Jersey Shore and raised as athletes, the Airey Bros have always shared a passion for physical culture, athletic performance, and human optimization, always striving to be the strongest versions of themselves, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Along the way, they've met some pretty amazing humans and have had some pretty epic adventures. The intention of Airey Bros Radio is to showcase these amazing people and the impact that they've had on them, and to share tips, tricks, and hacks so that you can win each day, every day.
It's hard to talk about this because it's something I just do impulsively now. But just in, spending time with friends, like going out, being social, laughing, seeing movies, like stuff that like a lot of the people in the spiritual space really like kind of poo-poo and say, oh, that's just the mainstream society. It's like, well, sports are fun, like they're not, yeah, there's product placement. Yeah, you could argue they're kind of weapons of mass distraction in some ways, a lot of these things, but at the same time, like there's unity in that. It's just, it's play, it's fun. Just stop analyzing it, just enjoy it, and I think that's what I would like to leave people who want to listen to this from more of that mind, body, spiritual side with, is that it's just a lot of what people, anyone who's trying to tell you need to get somewhere for nirvana or enlightenment is full of shit. You really just need to kind of let go and do what makes you happy, be okay with yourself. And I'm probably going to change some of my answers if you guys talk to me in even just 6 months or a year from now. But I do think that's headed in the right direction, like the bigger picture, the greater purpose.
What up, y'all? This is Airey Bros Radio, and this is episode 26 with Matt Cooper. Grab yourself a notebook and a pen, buckle up, and get ready for this one. You excited for this, Prince?
Yeah, I am so excited for this Matt Cooper episode. Matt was another one of those guests who we had listened to last year around this time. Got all the knowledge that he was putting out on that podcast that we heard him on last year, and then to have him come on and kind of switch his kit up and just talk about growing as a coach and growing as a human and what he's been going through. This is really good podcast, really good conversation.
Yeah, Matt's an incredible human being and an amazing coach, both strength and conditioning and on the nutrition side of things. And just with some of the athletes and people that he's worked with, he's a wealth of knowledge. So we were super cool to have him on and talk. And I think, like you said, we were thinking maybe the conversation would go in one direction, or at least that's originally what we thought. And then it got way more into a lot of the other stuff in terms of, speed of sport, strength and conditioning, and that sort of stuff. And then it's also, Matt has given us some names of some people who else we could reach out to. So super great conversation. Matt's a great dude, and we were lucky to have him on. And again, by the powers of social media and just reaching out to people, it's pretty cool who we can connect to. So really great to have this conversation with Matt. So for all you people that are in there or out there listening for optimization and sport performance and all those sorts of things that you know and love about the Airey Bros, Matt is definitely on another level when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, just his knowledge, his experience, being able to talk on experience, put it into words. Matt's on another level. Anyone that we've had on up to this point on the podcast, and like you just stated, Matt speaks our language. He's all about being your own science experiment and just upping your game, and not always trying to go for optimization, right? Sometimes we just have to be in the muck of things, and that was a point that really hit home hard with me, because it's always about optimization and trying to be the best. And Matt goes into detail about how you can't always live on top of the mountain, how it's just about being right now, and it's not always going to be at peak performance, and being okay with that. And when Matt dived into that and kind of how he has used psychedelics just to be right now and not, practice using them as much and kind of doing more of the back end thing, it's really, really interesting and just a different perspective than what we're used to.
Yeah, and I think, I don't want to speak for you, but I know kind of for the both of us, it's always been that, striving to be happier, striving to be more positive. And the more we talk to a lot of these people, the more it's comforting to me to realize that it's not always about unicorns and rainbows and puppy dogs and ice creams. And some days, even the happiest people have down days for whatever it may be. And it's just a matter of acknowledging that and sitting in it and being okay with it and maybe leaning into it a little bit and just knowing that, yeah, some days it's not going to be 65 and sunny with 0 wind at the top of a peak at 14,000 feet. Some days it's going to be a shitstorm and it's going to be 28 degrees and snowy, and you just stepped in a puddle and you forgot to wear your boots because it was beautiful when you walked out. Whatever. I'm rambling a little bit, but the point is that the more and more we talk to these people about leveling up and doing these things, the more and more comforting it is to be aware and to know that, yeah, not every day is going to be perfect. You're not always going to be happy, and it's okay to be that. It's about acknowledging it and sitting with it, breathing into it, maybe turning it around because it's some external thing. But some days it's just like, all right, I enjoyed a couple minutes of mouth pleasure last night, and now I have to handle the repercussions or whatever it may be. It's not the end of the world. The sky isn't falling. This is going to pass. Drink a little bit more water, fast for the rest of the day, whatever it may be. But for me, talking more and more about these sorts of topics is really good for me because, like I said, it's reassuring to know that not every day is going to be perfect, and that's okay. That's part of the human experience.
Yeah, and to have, certain practices kind of help you counteract that stuff, but not to, as we've had a couple guests say, spiritually bypass something or just, meditate into an oblivion and kind of push everything aside and just, you have those practices, but some days you just got to sit in the muck and be okay with the muck because at the end of the day, this is life and that's part of life. And, it was really good to have Matt on here and kind of just bro out with another bro who's into the same stuff and was super open and transparent with us. Is something that I really appreciate about this interview.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. This is a great episode with Matt Cooper. You can check him out at Rewire Performance. I'll put all his good stuff in the show notes, but like I said, grab yourself a pen and paper because you're going to want to write some stuff down. Check out his website. I'll put that stuff in the show notes, but sit back, relax, enjoy today's episode of Airey Bros Radio with Matt Cooper. Much love. Namaste from the boys of 1512. All right, we're here with Matt Cooper. Matt, thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We are super psyched to have you on and get into some of the stuff that you've been working on and the information you've been putting out there. When we first discovered you, a lot of the content that we were looking at really resonated with some of the things that we've been doing with our own training and performance and racing and stuff like that. So welcome. Super stoked to have you on. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, guys, I really appreciate you guys, just wanting to reach out and wanting to have me on the show in the first place. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great. Like I said, we have people that know us and follow us and know us from the athletic side of things. And then some of these more kind of woo-woo things that we've been getting into the last couple of years. People may not necessarily take our word for it, so we're trying to bring as many knowledgeable people with their information so that we can open up some doors for some other people and not just think that we're these crazy, wacky hippies that moved from New Jersey to live in Colorado, and that there is some science behind this stuff, and there are other people out there that are doing this. So really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to kind of give the people on who you are and kind of what brought you to the game, just give us a little bit of your background and how you kind of got into studying and practicing what you're doing at the present moment.
Yeah, so basically the long and short of it is on the fitness, nutrition, training side. I got into that because in college I started doing it after high school, I started doing it for personal benefit, and what eventually became research started as me-search. And I found out that I was really passionate about it, and I started helping people that way. And then that actually sort of continued with the same story arc of my own personal evolution. And by that I mean, when I was in my early to mid-20s, I actually became really sick following a lot of mainstream health and fitness advice. And so I had to learn about a lot of alternative means of living my life, personal development, a lot of these like tools of the mind body. And on top of that, things like functional medicine, preventative health, physiology. This word's kind of been commoditized, but biohacking in a way, and so when I learned about a lot of this, I was able to kind of rework like my own physiology, my own life in many ways, honestly. And I also found out around that time, when I changed how I was like living and eating, it was almost like I had a new lease on life, because I no longer was like having as much trouble like looking people in the eyes and having a lot of like social dynamic interactions and whatnot. And I kind of realized that I almost like lived, 2/3, 3/4 of my life, like almost quasi like on the spectrum somehow, on that like OCD, ADHD, kind of autism spectrum somehow. And it was like, when I was able to change a lot of my personal development habits and like actual like the food I was feeding myself, it was like, oh shit, like this is a, can I curse?
Yeah, you're good.
Let it rip.
Let it rip. Yeah, fully automatic now. It was like a new lease on life, and I'm like, wow, like there really is an intersection of what we put in our bodies, health, emotions, and physiology and thoughts, and just like kind of how you present in this world, and your ability to really self-author your own journey, right? And you can extrapolate that into like nuances, like I know you guys want to later, like athletic performance, all the way down to just looking at how some people kind of are the way they are, and certain behavioral dynamics and whatnot. And you can kind of almost see, if you know the physiology, like biochemical imbalances that are making them that way. I mean, it's an and both, plus and more situation. It's never just one or just the other. But anyways, my own journey got me there. And so it's like, okay, well, if I can kind of unite these two camps of holistic health and functional medicine with strength and conditioning and sports science, I can have all my loves and at the same time help other people. So it's, it's all just my 2 cents from the cheap seats at the end of the day. But that's how, why, what.
I express to my athletes all the time that you are your own science experiment, and what works for me may not necessarily work for you, and vice versa, and you have to kind of figure those things out on your own. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to what you're putting in your body first and foremost. And you can have all these athletic goals and all these aspirations, but if you're not working in and doing the right things on that end, you're kind of just pissing in the wind with your athletic endeavors, because you have to do the work internally, be it mindfulness, gratitude, and then just the clean, healthy, kind of farm to table type of nutrition, be it paleo, be it keto, be it vegan, plant-based, whatever you want to call it. That's where it all starts. And if you're not really willing to commit to those things, you should probably rethink your athletic goals first and foremost.
A lot of times people want to focus on training, and I'll put all their emphasis there, and then they don't necessarily focus on the aspects of what makes you adapt to the training to ultimately become better, to become stronger, to become faster, more explosive, more resilient, or more fit, whatever level you're playing at.
Yeah, there's more that goes into training than what you do in the gym, right? You have an hour in the gym, and then you have the other 23 to fuck it all up. That's kind of always how I saw it. You said,
and
go ahead.
I get a lot of the sort of classic old school people from the gym tend to dismiss a lot of the recovery side and working in, as you put it, and all these things around the workout that help you adapt to the workout. Because there are a lot of people in the space who just sort of like, it's almost the way they talk, it's almost like they want to turn people into these like grown-up sized Care Bears. And that's, so it's like the wrong people care about recovery. So I get where the gym people are coming from, saying this is woo-woo, or this is, this is different, because there are people that kind of either do like a lot of like left brain pop sort of spirituality, or as I call it, like studio gangster spiritualism. And yeah, and then also a lot of people who just sort of want to cryotherapy all their problems away, you know what I'm saying? And it's like it's and both, plus and more. You kind of need to know like when to use what tools, and generally speaking, I'm a fan of most of these things. It's just the right dose, the right situation, the right context and process.
Going back to touching on diet and how you cleared up some of your issues, you said, semi on the spectrum, undiagnosed, but you noticed once you cleaned up your diet that you started being able to look people in the eyes and have more confidence. What do you correlate that to? What were you eating at the time? How are you eating now? And what are the differences you see now, or when you kind of fall off that and maybe put some of those other foods back into your life?
Right. So I think there's a few of them. A lot of these are pro-inflammatory agents that actually can cause like neuroimmune responses in the body. And by that I mean when you eat them, they actually like you take them in, and then where the gut-brain axis links, that actually causes your body to go into like an excess state of fight or flight, which has a lot of downstream consequences on the body, whether you're talking about tissue quality all the way to movement. Not to mention just that feedback loop with what it does to how you think, elements of your personality, neurotransmitters, because there are, for example, with serotonin, I think something like 70% of it's produced in the gut. There are elements of that at play for sure. There's elements of like having needed to just like breathe and meditate and not be this hyper-reactive kid, which I think kind of probably started when I was, I had a C-section birth, and that kind of tends to compromise a lot of this like neurosensory stuff, the immune system, nervous system. I also, according to parsing through my genetics, and not by one of those like gene by gene readout sites, but I mean actually working with a practitioner, Ryan Freisinger of Cosmic Animal, I was able to look into that and see how much I had trouble with things like potentially clearing certain viral infections, and then also clearing heavy metals from the body. And I actually think that a lot of my like some of the vaccinations I had when I was young didn't really sit well with me. And I know right away people are going to be like, "Oh my God, anti-vaxxer." Really, I'm not. I'm not actually. To me, I think it should be treated like peanuts. And it's like, if you have the ability to eat peanuts and you're not allergic to them, then fucking eat peanuts, But with vaccinations, in our society always wants black and white answers. But with vaccinations, you have to look at the fact that they do contain elements of heavy metal. They do contain various, viral contaminants, fecal matter to sort of be like elicit those adaptations in the system, right? And so if you know someone has compromised ability to naturally detox in certain pathways, or has sort of a really compromised immune system, and there's a lot more to this. I really think you guys should have Ryan Freisinger on the podcast to riff out on this a little more, since that's more of his jam. But these are things that might give someone a poor response to vaccinations, whereas like their best route to getting the same result might look different, and it also potentially might look more preventative. And then some people can handle vaccinations, and you might also need to I think that there might be a need to reconstitute some of what actually goes into vaccinations. And yeah, it's another conversation. But yeah, so I think a lot of that stuff coalesced into really denting my personality. And actually, that led into a lot of like almost overcommittal into some of that left brain spirituality myself. And it was only very recently, as my girlfriend has pointed out, and in going through some stuff again, is that I actually didn't really do the work, even though I thought I was doing the work. So I was meditating, I was doing breath work, I was eating right, I was doing psychedelics. I was living in alignment with my morals and stuff. So very recently, I would say the more development has transpired. You catch me at a good time, because like I've actually just taken the time to sort of intentionally just do nothing, just sit with those parts of myself that are very flighty and full of, like, riddled with anxiety, maybe a little bit of trauma, nothing like huge, but maybe mild stuff. And then, basically just self-parent, and so it's really like helped me understand truly like what letting go is, and kind of what being in flow is, instead of just sort of talking about it. The last thing I'll say, because I know this has been a bit of a diatribe, is a lot of people tend to spend a lot of this time on the mountain, in this like peak performance mountain, like the Dave Asprey types of the world. And those people are cool because, a lot of other people are getting healthier because of them. But at the same time, for those of us in the space, it's like, okay, we're really not meant as humans to live peak performance, optimum, like top of the mountain all the time. And at the same time, we really don't want to just sort of rely on all these things outside of ourselves just to be and just to live and just to have to exist. They're kind of meant to be more signposts or situational things to optimize, but they're not meant to be things that dilute and allow you to neglect the fundamentals. And the same with psychedelics too. It's like the reality is that this world is the one we have to live in at the end of the day. And so you have to be careful with how much checking out you're doing, even if it is good and intentional, not necessarily like the 60s. Like for me, for example, when I go to speak at some of these mind-body events, some of the things like that, they look at me and they say, okay, well, you have a shaved head, you have tattoos, you listen to hip hop, and in reggae, they're like, what are you doing here? And it's like, okay, well, isn't this supposed to be a place where it's judgment free? You know what I mean? Just because I'm not wearing my pajamas here like I'm at Burning Man, like I'm somehow less spiritual than you, like, what the fuck? So I like to think that I'm kind of a voice of reason in that whole space a little bit, but who knows, maybe I'm the one who's wrong.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Jimmy and I say all the time that you have to be your own parent, because there's no one there that's going to tell you to go to bed early, or to write in your journal, or to meditate, or to eat right. So that's something that we say to each other all the time. I also mention that with my clients as well, that sometimes you just got to be your own parent to get shit done, because at the end of the day, you're the only one that's responsible for yourself once you get out of your parents' house.
Yeah, man, absolutely. There's another great guy to talk to about that named Mike Colleen. I can connect you guys if you want.
Please do.
He sort of walks different lines like the those of us on this call. He is an NLP, he can be a master practitioner. He's a former kickboxer, a world champion kickboxer. He's also an energy healer. So he's helped me a lot. And definitely, like, when you feel like you get some good mentors in your life, he's absolutely one of them for me. And it's been good. The evolution's been good.
I think the other important thing you touched on was that every day is not going to be unicorns and rainbows and puppy dogs and ice cream, and that's okay. And you just have to learn some days to sit with that and kind of really analyze that. And that's one of the things that I've been able to do, is I've really realized how toxic gluten can be for me and my mindset. And like, there's like a 48-hour, sometimes a 72-hour window after I have some gluten where I'm a completely different person. Like, I don't want to say I'm on suicide watch, but I get really, really blue from eating gluten. And it's taken me 43 years to get to this point where now I can, we live about a half mile from Voodoo Donuts, and we walk by there pretty regularly. And I'm at the point now where I can just, like, there's no urge, there's no resistance. I can walk in there when friends are in town visiting, and they'll go get their donut or two or three, and I have no interest in it, because I know what that's going to do to me on the back end. Like, I can deal with the inflammation and the GI issues, but I'm literally like people don't want to be around me for 2 or 3 days afterwards because I'm self-deprecating, I have self-doubt, I'm self-conscious, like I question my place in the world, what I'm doing with my life, all these things. So I know that there's just certain things now. It's taken me a long time to get there, but it's not worth the 30 to 60 seconds of mouth pleasure to deal with 48, 72 hours of like this depression.
Yeah, you got more than you bargained for when you went to Voodoo Donuts. You left with some voodoo, dude.
I did. I really did. And the last time I was there, we just happened to be walking by. They were doing a soft opening, and there was one of the employees was outside, and he was just barking at people. Hey, we got free donuts. You want a free donut? Free donuts. And we walked by. He's like, you guys want donuts, don't you? And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And yeah, I went in, had a donut, and then for 2 days, the guy sitting across from me right now had to deal with me and like talk me off the ledge because I am literally a different person.
Yeah, brother. That's the interesting thing too, is that so I'll circle back on your point about rainbows and butterfly days. As far as the wheat and gluten goes, only about 1 in 100 people actually have a wheat and gluten sensitivity, and that's where like a lot of the naysayers like to call bullshit. And the reality is that a lot of people are out there doing it because it's trendy. At the same time, how do we explain the fact that people can go to Europe and have wheat, gluten, pro-inflammatory grains, in America at least, but when they have them over there, they're fine? That is likely a result of processing, right? Because that's the main distinction. Ours have pesticide, Roundup, and a lot more poor farming practices. And with that also comes like things the body's just not used to dealing with, and so maybe you're a, wheat and gluten sensitive person. At the same time, it probably is because like our wheat products just aren't the same, like there's a joke about organic food. What was it? And just, it's sort of, food quality in general. It's, eat organic food, or as your grandparents used to call it, food. You know what I'm saying? So it's like that there's definitely some of that at play. So I get what you're saying for sure. And I actually think that, that and foods like that can cause a lot of soft tissue injuries. At the same time, what you said about the rainbows and unicorn days, like up until like very recently, when I really am going through something with, my girlfriend is, very much the love of my life. I kind of realized that not only what I spoke to earlier, just how disconnected I was head to body, which also was causing me to, had some things in there where I like didn't really like myself and felt like I had to be something, some way in order to get that like and respect. Now I finally understand. I mean, I really, truly get it and see it when people are like, you have to just be yourself and let go. And actually that's kind of the secret to success and just being fucking happy. So I also would be someone who, if I was having a bad day, I would do every fucking thing in the world to change it instead of just sitting there and fucking being with it. And there are times where I'm like, if I catch myself too far in the mud, okay, I'm going to go, shoot hoops, something for therapy. I'm going to go do something. At the same time, and if I may be anxious before a speech or something, I can do breath work or something to get where I need to be in that type of moment. But a lot of times, like, those days like build up and those feelings build up and build up because you never just sat there and self-parented with them. You never just sat there and were with them. I mean, that's what real integration is like fucking feel it, and that's, and my girlfriend she'll laugh at this because like I would talk about this stuff. Meanwhile, I was doing everything under the sun to not feel these emotions, And what's funny is that the more you kind of lean into them and just let them be initially, the more in the long run you are going to have more unicorn days and you are going to have better days, and you're going to cry more, sure, but you're also going to laugh a hell of a lot more. And so I think that's what like a lot of people in the sort of neo-spiritual scene really need to realize.
It's interesting you say that about doing everything to avoid just sitting in it. I can tell some days when I'm not in a good headspace, I'm doing some breath work and it's completely manic and I'm completely not putting intent in there. I'm just trying to do it to change my mindset at the time. And then just going back to what you were saying about being okay about just sitting in the muck. As a coach and someone who works in the space, do you think it just comes with time and experience, opposed to you could tell me all day just to sit with it and be with it, but it kind of takes time and evolving as a human?
Well, I really think that that's a good question. I think some people have to learn it that way. And so a lot of times why we all should really listen to older people is because they've sort of just lived and wound up learning this way on their own just through the course of life, you know? At the same time, I think that you can do it now, right? It just takes kind of commitment. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people are willing to meditate, but they're also the same people who are like on their phone while they like watch TV, while they talk to a person, and when they're alone, they got to check their phone a bunch of times a day. They got to, you know, be plugged into email. And I was one of those dudes for the longest time. So I think a lot of it comes down to just being able to be whole, solid, grounded, and complete. What that means is also kind of opening up to your caveman right brain, which is the creative artist brain, and also the, you know, the lizard brain, the reptilian brain in a lot of ways. And that's also the place where you're going to receive and give the best love. But it's also something, because it is in part physiological, it's something you can kind of just like get to usually by certain like kind of breathing initially, like ha breathing is something I'm a fan of. And then also certain, and that's Mike taught me that. And then certain just sort of almost like eye manipulation, like going to big open spaces, like taking a walk in nature, going to the beach, things like that are fun and feel good for a lot of reasons. You know, and I'm not going to do what I used to do and break this down into one physiological thing. At the same time, there's also a physical component too to why that feels good. Part of it's just it kind of gets you less linear and fixated on a screen or your problems, and it kind of like lets your eyes actually adjust, and there's actually a physical response in the body for it. So, you know, it's a both thing. That's a little bit of the science behind it, and then there's also a lot of, you know, soulful reasons why those things are just fun, you know, and good for you.
You mentioned, I believe it was called breathing. Can you just kind of go into detail and maybe give us a little example of what that entails?
Yeah, absolutely. I think afterwards I'll definitely connect you guys with Mike, so you can have him on to talk about the whys and the whats and the whens, and I'll do like a kind of a idiot's dummy's guide to it. Basically, you just take a big deep breath in your nose. You guys can do it right now if you want. And then you let it out like a balloon, just letting out air. You don't force it out, and you almost kind of purse your throat a little bit, if that's kind of tough to you, without creating more tension in your forehead and neck, which we do not want. Just almost like kind of a soft pufferfish sort of look to your cheeks. Doing it like that way can help too.
And is there a number of breaths that you do like that? Or does it vary?
I don't like setting it. Is I've been taught it, you don't want to set numbers, because that will result in you kind of keeping like a thought process and a linear mindset. You almost just want to keep doing it until you feel a little bit better, you know, and instead of just being like, okay, I'm going to do 10 and then go like, oh fuck, it's not working, you know. So you just kind of want to do it till you feel good, man. I mean, and I've had like coming off some of the like worst and best times of my life recently, because of, you know, some of that stuff I told you I was dealing with. At the same time, it feels a lot better to be whole, solid, grounded, and complete, like feeling all these things instead of running from them, you know? And so the little ways to check in like this, just going on a walk in nature, like by the beach, just sitting with yourself, doing some simple breathing, a lot of that kind of stuff, just you know, it really helps. And then the other side of it is just not always making everything about doing and achieving and, like I said, needing to stay at the top of the mountain, just taking time to do nothing, you know, like the stuff that you kind of almost like just it's hard to talk about this because it's something I just do impulsively now. But just in, spending time with friends, like going out, being social, laughing, seeing movies, like stuff that like a lot of the people in the spiritual space really like kind of poo-poo and say, oh, that's just the mainstream society. It's like, well, sports are fun, like they're not, yeah, there's product placement. Yeah, you could argue they're kind of weapons of mass distraction in some ways, a lot of these things, but at the same time, like there's unity in that. It's just, it's play, it's fun. Just stop analyzing it, just enjoy it, and I think that's what I would like to leave people who want to listen to this from more of that mind, body, spiritual side with, is that it's just a lot of what people, like anyone who's trying to tell you need to get somewhere for nirvana or enlightenment is full of shit. You really just need to kind of let go and do what makes you happy, be okay with yourself. And I'm probably going to change some of my answers if you guys talk to me in even just 6 months or a year from now. But I do think that's headed in the right direction, like the bigger picture, the greater purpose.
Yeah, just be yourself, enjoy life. Don't take it too seriously with yourself. It's funny you talk about getting out and playing. I've been a lifelong runner, competitive at a very high level, and I'm at the point now where I don't wear a watch, I don't use GPS, and when I go out either into the mountains with my friends or I go out with some of my road running friends, they're just completely blown away that I don't care about mileage or time or pace. And I'm like, I'm 43. Like, yeah, I'm going to race, I'm going to compete, but I don't care. Like, I'm going to focus on my breathing. I'm going to focus that I'm out in the woods with my friends and we might find some mushrooms along the way. Or, like we were out last weekend and we stumbled upon a ton of Anemone muscaria mushrooms. So we were like kid in the candy store finding those. They were beautiful. But yeah, I mean, I'm just going out to have fun and enjoy this. Like, I don't need to worry about how long it's going to take or what our pace is while we're doing it or how many miles it's going to be. Like, let's just go out and enjoy the morning. Let's get up early enough so we can catch the sunrise at, 11, 12, 13,000 feet, whatever it may be. And, just roll with it.
Yeah, man, I really see what you're saying. I think also, too, when you mentioned mushrooms, that kind of reminded me that a lot of times you'll hear about these people in the spiritual space that have done ayahuasca like 50 fucking times, and I'm like, what? Why? Like, I get that some people like a lot of prisoners, like a lot of people might need more signposts than others. They might need to have some more shit thrown in their face before they can really do some of this work. At the same time, a lot of these people that are kind of what I call they have like white collar sort of trauma, not like true PTSD. They more like childhood playground stuff like me, like everybody has, like, kind of no big deal stuff, but stuff that can definitely alter your life path if you let it. A lot of these people, I think that's sort of a result of not doing the work, like I've only done I'm looked at, like I'm getting looked at a little bit as like someone who maybe knows a little bit of what they're talking about in this space. And I've only done ayahuasca 3 times, I haven't microdosed in a while, actually. In fact, I actually hurt someone, really close to me because I had them do some microdosing, which is not to say anything bad about that. It's just to say, like, you got to meet people at their level. You got to just, also not try to change things that aren't meant to be changed. To tie it back to the point, though, a lot of times what psychedelics are actually truly meant to be, if you listen to the the shamans and just sort of even the American sort of positioners of them, are more of signposts, right? To like show you the way and maybe point some things out to you. On top of that, a lot of them are sort of meant to be these substitutes for a rite of passage in a society that doesn't really have rites of passage anymore. I've talked about this before, and I will again. We have a lot of different rites of passage thrown at us in media and movies, and we don't really have a society that sets us up to do that unless we take it upon ourselves to move, to change, to do that kind of stuff. So sometimes psychedelics, if you're dealing with that kind of stuff, writer's block, relative death, like whatever, they can be a little sort of hint to what you maybe ought to feel like or ought to deal with, and then from there, what you really want to do is actually do the work itself. A lot of this sitting with yourself, being with yourself, just being that we talked about earlier. You know, life isn't meant to be this hard. It's actually meant to be pretty easy. You know, I mean, if we are related to apes, something Ryan likes to say is that, you know, they spend like 90% of their time just chilling. You know what I mean? I know society doesn't necessarily set us up for that. At the same time, I think a lot of people look for every excuse and like not to actually chill. You know, I have clients that are talking about wanting to go unplug from the world by going to Burning Man, and it's like, well, if you craft a life you really have to unplug from, then that means your shit's broken, you know?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Jimmy and I talk about this all the time. I've had 10 ceremonies, and each time I'm always a little reluctant to go back in, minus the last one. Last one was a really beautiful experience, but that's what we talk about all the time, is that, you know, you interact with these strangers in ceremony, and you know, some people are very braggadocious by how many experiences they've had or how many ceremonies they've sat in, and then they're the first ones that are retching at the bucket, and they're so dramatic about it and so loud and just taking away from my experience. And you know, that's kind of the same conclusion that we've come to, is that they continue to do this, but they don't do the work on the back end afterwards and the integration and taking those messages that they received. And clearly, by the way that you're purging, you probably didn't take it seriously on the way in, going in with adhering to the dieta and doing things the right way. And I was listening to a podcast with a guy who claimed to be, he's a health guy in the health field, and he had said that after his second ceremony that him and his girlfriend had sex, and I was just kind of like blown away by that, like that, so disrespectful of the medicine and the plant and the principle of everything. So we couldn't agree more with that yeah, there's these people that they like to talk about how many times they've done it, but clearly when you're in ceremony with them, you can tell that they're just not receiving the messages or doing the work on either end of these experiences.
And just to add on to what Richie was saying and what you had touched on before, doing the work and using the messages you get in the ceremony, my first psychedelic experience was with Iboga in 2012. And I was going into that thinking that was the magic pill that was going to fix all my trauma. I was going to be like I was when I was a kid. It was going to get rid of everything. And then I went in and got punched straight in the face, realized I wasn't ready to deal with things. And it took me like 2.5 to 3 years of just really focusing on what I had gotten and realizing like, oh, there's a lot of work to be done. And there's nothing fun about doing certain psychedelics. And you realize that really quick with something like Iboga. It's like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of work to be put in, and you had no idea what you were getting yourself into when you got into this. But now you're in it, and now you have no other choice but to do the work or, you know, lose your mind.
Yeah, bro. You wanted a Happy Meal, not in a disrespectful way. You thought you were getting a Happy Meal. You know, you thought the toy came with the meal, and you know, you were going to get your side orders and your main course and all that. And it's like, that's, you know, a lot of times people come to me and they're like, it's after a psychedelic experience. And then they're like, well, it was phenomenal. And okay, you're still kind of at square one. You know, the people who've done a ton, they're almost more linear in left brain. It's like, a lot of them just sort of had that same experience. And it's like, well, that it's great. I'm a huge fan of them. It's just like the context to put them in is more like show you the way, almost like a mentor. And then you kind of always get what you need out of them, I find. You know, you'll have random experiences and like a dream, and then you'll have other ones that are like showing you exactly what you need to see, like, or think about that you've sort of been pushing aside, you know? And, you know, I almost cringe if I go and listen to myself talking on some of these other podcasts, even like a year ago. Like Bledsoe's is pretty good. There's even then, man, I mean, you could kind of hear the dissociative state in my voice. Whereas if you like replay this and listen to even just my voice, it's like I was, for whatever reason, you know, I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly why. Probably just some of that stress putting pressure on myself, you know, some mild childhood stuff. And I think most men are like this, if they're being honest with themselves. I was just so dissociated from my own feelings that it's like I cringe going back and watching myself. So it's really refreshing to be able to go on your show and talk about this, because it's more mentally stimulating and emotionally fulfilling for me now to then just be okay with leaving that out there and telling people, hey, yeah, go back and listen to me as someone who is sort of gaining traction in the space, and see how, like, learn from my mistakes so you don't have to, you know? So I think a lot of us go into it and we're like, oh, but, you know, we're meditating, we're doing this, we're doing that, we're doing all this left brain shit, and we're not just like sitting with it, you know? And sometimes, like, I really don't think that's all that different than, like, you know, drinking your problems away, just because you're doing it in a really formal setting, you know, with a substance that's, you know, obviously much like better for you in a small dose. At the same time, it's like just habitually, that's the same sort of idea. Is I need to take this, I need to do this to remove myself from something, and that's a little rough, you know. I do think that, like, you know, in having a little bit of this stuff, whether it's, you know, something like wine or whether it's something like a psychedelic, can really help open you up and crack you open. And then at that point, you can choose to have whatever relationship you want with that substance, you know. You know, drink when you feel like it, you know, maybe microdose or do like an experience if you need to with X, Y, or Z. At the same time, don't neglect the fundamentals. Don't neglect just living life and just being, you know, and being okay with that.
You had said before that you had hurt someone close to you with a microdose, and this is something that me and Richie talk about a lot, and just, you know, knowing the benefits that you get from psychedelics. You have talked about it before on other podcasts, opening up neuroplasticity, you know, the ability to deal with certain things, even breathe deeper, right? But something me and Richie talk about, and Richie's talked to me about, is not pushing it on people, not telling people this is the end-all, be-all, this is going to fix everything. If someone wants to talk to you about it, they're going to come to you with it and then talk about it. But don't be promoting it, don't be pushing it on people. As someone in that space and kind of learning as you go, just what have you seen, what have you experienced, and what have you learned from working with people with microdoses or whatever it may be?
So I'll share my own experience a little bit. I don't mind being open about it, and then I'll kind of talk about what I tend to see. It's actually usually one and the same. I sort of communicated to that person that I wanted them to change when I asked them to do this. The reality is that I was trying to just maybe help them with what I thought I was doing at the time, was helping with anxiety, helping with stopping like a bit of conflict, stuff like that, fighting, stuff like that. And by suggesting things like meditation, like microdosing, things like that, it's okay to introduce someone to that kind of stuff. In a lot of ways, that's sort of what I do for, you know, a living in part. But on top of that, it's also important to just love people as they are. You know, there's you know, I'm not a country music fan. There's a country music song called, you know, if you're going to love her, leave her wild. And that's sort of the way I think you kind of want to take your significant other relationship, and also, you know, your relationships as far as your family and friends go. Like, a lot of what you might look at as a problem in some person, or not even consciously, like maybe it's just like, oh, well, they tend to be like this, so I'll help them do this. Like, you don't even consciously think about how it's going to impact them. That might make them feel like you're taking something away from who they are, and that's probably the most fucked up feeling that you can get from someone that you love, you know? And the other thing to think about is, or to really like sink into and feel, is you also need to know what place are you doing it from. In my case, was I doing it from a grounded, whole, complete, emotionally connected space? Not at all. You know, I was doing it from a heady space where I was so disconnected with my own feelings. I wasn't also being there for this person for moral support and just being there, honestly. And that includes, like, not just for problems, that includes just aspects of myself that I lost touch with, just, you know, having fun, goofing off, adventure, play, and it's such an and both plus and more situation. I think a lot of us tend to neglect that. And of all the things I've done in this space, I still meditate, almost every day. Like I said, I do some of that breath work when I need it. Obviously, like there's sciencey stuff I can do with athletes, with breath work and a lot of other things. I still get very left brain when I need to. I'm glad I did psychedelics. At the same time, though, I think like the most impactful thing I've done has been just a lot of the work that like Mike's introduced me to, and just learning, just being again. It's like not even something I have to think about now. It just is. And that's felt really, really good. I think I'm not sure how well I actually answered your question there, dude, versus just like shared my own thing. I do see that with a lot of other people, though. I always feel like stories put asses in the seats, and so that's mine.
So I know for both of us, our journey into taking psychedelics seriously is coming from, I guess, somewhat you could call it like maybe a depressive state. Now I kind of realize that is more of, it's not depression, it's more of like feeling like you're not living up or fulfilling your purpose, or even knowing what your purpose is, and trying to figure all of that out. That was what sent me down to Peru the first time. I was living in San Diego, and one of the most beautiful places in the world, and I just for some reason wasn't really stoked or happy on it. And that was like the first time I had heard of ayahuasca, maybe a year before, and I've got to get down there to try this. And then that's kind of still been the process. And that was what it was originally that turned me, or how I discovered microdosing. And then as I was doing that, trying to kind of navigate the waters of having those rainbows and unicorn days every day, I got into the performance aspect of it and using it in training and then in racing. So I ran the Leadville 100 last year, microdosing, and then I've run a couple shorter like local races, but I've also did the Boston Marathon this year and the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon, and it's been a pretty amazing experience. And I've been trying to talk to people about the performance enhancing benefits, and it has nothing to do with what most people consider nowadays what they think of performance enhancements, like with EPO or with testosterone, those things where they're allowing you to recover faster so you can train harder or get back to training. My experience of what I'm now looking or viewing as performance enhancement is, if I'm suffering climbing up a mountain and, I may start thinking of some, being on like a negative loop, and then all of a sudden I look and I see this cloud formation, and it just blows my mind how, the layers and the intricacies of the clouds, and all of a sudden I have this extreme appreciation and gratitude for the clouds, and then that changes my mindset into a positive mindset. Like, isn't that performance enhancement in itself? And then I've also experienced, like, I'm able, like Jimmy had said, tap into my breathing more and breathe deeper, and use that to control or regulate my threshold. And I'm also feel like I'm more keen or in tune with my movement patterns and how my legs are moving, and in the proper mechanical ways. Then that, to me, that is performance enhancing too. So it's like, what do we really consider performance enhancement?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, man. Like, in some ways, kind of healing and dealing with your shit, healing and dealing. Might have to hang on to that.
Put that on a t-shirt.
Healing and dealing, mind-body space, and drug dealers. Healing and dealing, wheeling and dealing. Yeah, man, I mean, for sure. I think that doing a lot of the stuff that really kind of helped, it could do one of two things. And this is an either-or situation. Sometimes and. A lot of athletes, what makes them so great is because they dissociate from themselves, I think. They are able to just dissociate from pain, dissociate from some of the balance in life, and really just get that singular fixation. That's almost what I did on my business on accident, until it became not fun anymore. And the other side of that is you also can find a lot of athletes who might have something mentally holding them back, and then doing some of this work, whatever constellation of it is, can really help shine them on to being able to take the game-winning shot, you know, being a Kobe or a Jordan, being able to not have that subconscious blockage in their life that's going to lead them to self-sabotage too. So I do think a lot of that stuff, whether you want to look at it from sort of an artist perspective, and at the same time from a science perspective, I mean, it really does help. As you put it too, like, and you've heard me talk about on other podcasts, there's like neurophysiologic tuning that happens from, you know, appropriately dosed like psychedelics, like in conjunction with the right diet and, you know, balance and blend of everything else that you're doing in your lifestyle. At the same time, I think there's some philosophical benefits, you know, and that same effect you notice that like helps you check in is probably something you could use day to day. But if you're using it day to day, you don't want to have that sort of analgesic effect, the getting rid of pain that maybe you're kind of supposed to feel, you know? So I also think that, yeah, I think in the future we're going to have like, just like corporate teams that sponsor psychedelic outings, we're going to have sports teams that go out and do team bonding like that with that kind of stuff. I do think though that there's going to be some like unexpected dropouts from doing this stuff. You know, my favorite NBA player now is Larry Sanders, and he's a guy who probably could have been a perennial all-star for his ability, his defense, and he walked away from the NBA. You know, they tried to say it was because he got popped for weed and then kind of, you know, went down the bucket. The reality is he did have a ton of anxiety he was dealing with, and he just woke up and realized that, you know, I am a father, I'm an artist, you know, I'm a boyfriend or husband, and a creator, and I also sometimes play basketball. And it's just like, I think he was one of the guys who was just sort of like, because of his ability, was recruited from such a young age, maybe because he was tall and athletic, and just sort of like kept rolling with that because it was he was best at. And I sort of like, you know, my sporting career is, you know, it's a joke. It's just, I played for a long time. I had fun. I could have been better if I really cared about applying myself at that time, but I didn't. And so I can relate to that a lot in my own way, and also now with my business. It's like, I think I'm, especially with the strength and conditioning and combining that with the nutrition, you know, I really do think I'm one of the best in the world at what I do. And I bring that up not because I'm that great or anything. It's just that I love it and I have a passion for it. At the same time, it's not that itself, but my relationship to that created such a pressurized situation for myself. That's probably why I really hurt my girlfriend, you know, in a lot of ways. And so it's just, don't neglect the and is what he says, and that's what I say too.
How do you balance, you know, being one of the best strength coaches in the world, having a very successful business, but as you said, you know, you hurt your girlfriend. How do you balance being all in on your business and everything, but also trying to have a successful relationship, trying to tap into, you know, your sensitive side and that side that's going to be better in a relationship?
So I'm a super sensitive person. That's sort of the joke here. I'm so fucking sensitive, which is good because like power and strength comes from there too. At the same time, like I was really not connected to feeling before I'm seeing what I'm seeing now, and so that really interfered with that. And so from that place, that interferes with balance. It actually, believe it or not, being ultra left brain all the time is not the best thing for your business either. Like I said, you're not meant to be on the mountain all the time. So, I mean, I'll be honest with you guys, I'm still learning it. I'm still learning it. I'm very much in the thick of it. In some ways, I'm just getting off the starting blocks here. And it took me getting time by myself and losing one of, hopefully temporarily, losing, you know, the love of my life and one of those like once in a lifetime relationships in order to wake up from this. And And now I really see what balance is, and I realize like how much I need to do on the work side to get fulfillment from it and also be successful. I'm still very money motivated, and at the same time also just be okay just being me and living and not having to give a shit about how good I am at my job, or what other people think of how good I am at my job in order for me to derive satisfaction. You know, I believe in myself, and, you know, if other people don't really like working with me, that's fine. You know, there's other better fits, and there's people better at what they do than what I do. I in some ways, I do a holistic aspect of things. I also kind of do a niche aspect of things. So, regarding balance, yeah, man, it's just a lot of us really, really, really have to learn the hard way, whether it's a CEO getting burnout, or whether it's me and, you know, my story right now. At the same time, I do think I needed to go through what I needed to go through just to have that awakening, and no amount of psychedelics or seminars or whatever could have taught me that. You know, life will teach you that. I'm not trying to get all like philosophical with you. That's just, you know, from the heart. This is what's going on for me.
You're good, brother.
And what I see in other people.
You're in good company.
You're good company. I have had two failed relationships where I've had to really look inward at you know, my outlook on life, and we talk about this a lot, that sometimes you live below the line and you don't even realize, you know, what you're saying and how that can negatively impact people. The other thing, you mentioned that you're a sensitive person. I am also a very sensitive person.
Hard guys have feelings too.
Yeah, hard guys have feelings too.
I think the harder guys are the ones who actually are in touch with that power too, you know?
And was that something that you were aware of, or is it something that you've come to realize because people have told you that? Because I've had people tell me like, "Oh, you're so sensitive, you're too sensitive," and it's like, nah, I'm me. You know what I mean? This is who I am. Love it or leave it, you know, love it or hate it. This is who I am. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't have a poker face. You know, this is just, and now realizing that some of those bad days was due to gluten, but, you know.
If my girlfriend ever listens to this, she's going to make so much fun of me. We always joke, like, you know, like, what is it from Waterboy, where they say, such and such is the devil, like that.
Foosball is the
meme.
devil.
Like, gluten is the devil. Yeah, the foosball is the devil. Gluten, which I love foosball, by the way. So I'm enjoying getting back into that.
Yeah, it is the devil. At least for me, it is.
I'm sorry, man. I really just interrupted you there.
Oh no, you're good. You're good. No, I mean I'm who I am, and I am sensitive. I have feelings, and I'm okay with that. But at the same time, I'm not a doormat, and like, no one is above getting checked, and if you step on me or try to step on me, like, we're gonna also have a problem, because I'm fucking from New Jersey, and I have no problem throwing my hands if I need to, you know. So like, but it's that struggle, and we talk about this with some of our guests too, where you know, be based on our upbringing or our traumas or whatever, where, you know, we're quick to react sometimes. So it's finding that balance and being okay with that balance of like that peaceful warrior, where yes, we want to be Zen-like and we want to let a lot of shit go, but at the same time there's a line where there's certain shit that just can't be let go, and when I'm not gonna let it go, I'm gonna explode. It's always that balance of finding that line of being the peaceful warrior, of being chill, being laid back, being and just enjoying life, but also like being an advocate for yourself and knowing when to stand up for yourself, and having to get into it if you need to get into it.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've been in, you know, not like a prisoner level amount of fights or whatever, but you know, I've been in definitely more than the average person, and I even to this day, like, I'm here talking about what we're talking about, and I can't tell you that if someone crossed me in the right type of way, like, I wouldn't still, you know, do what I need to do. In fact, something like that happened not that long ago, but that's not really the point. It's kind of like what you're saying is like, don't reject your feelings. I mean, know when you're out of control and know when to check yourself. and also listen to the people around you who really know you, not the ones who are just sort of being there for moral support right now to kind of, a sounding board can be great and it can be the best thing in the world. At the same time, like, and you see this a lot with like men and their guy friends, or like women and their girlfriends, especially after breakups. It's like they don't really know the situation, so they're just going to tell you what you kind of need to hear then, and they might listen to you, and that might be the best thing in the world. At the same time, they don't necessarily like know what that is. So it's like I think a lot of times people tell us to do things to shut down our feelings, and shut down our emotions, and shut down or reject kind of getting out of control. I mean, sometimes you do just need to like feel things, even if it means sort of getting out of control, in a way that won't harm other people, in like that tender warrior way you put it.
So, talking about emotions, talking about feelings, I believe everyone on this call deals with them and has a lot of them. One thing I wanted to ask you, I've heard you talk about trauma release exercises, and I just wanted you to kind of go into what are these trauma release exercises. Is there any that you could kind of give us over the air, or is it more of a hands-on type of deal, and what these release exercises do?
Yeah. So they were developed by Dr. David Berceli, and I don't know to what degree someone can claim ownership over this reflex in the body. At the same time, he's the one whose exercises that I use. I've been shown them. I'm not certified by him. At the same time, they're basically a series of exercises that reactivate that mammalian reflex in the body. And in a society where you kind of don't really feel things, it allows you to just feel them again and process them. And again, not to be mistaken for doing the work, but they are a way to get you back in your body again if you're kind of removed from it. So if you look at a deer crossing the road and it almost gets hit by a car, kind of goes on the other side and shakes itself off. Your dog, after you scold it, or it kind of has a tense situation, like looking at another dog, it'll shake itself off. Those goats that like fall and pass out and shake, or faint and pass out and shake. Those are all examples of it in mammals, and mammals have the ability to do this. Humans kind of lost our way. I'm forgetting if it's through just what combination of like sitting, the modern lifestyle, various insults to the body, the fact that we are cognitive, conscious, exploring, self-aware beings, whatever. The reality is that these are things like a series of exercises basically that triggers a bundle of nerve endings in your psoas to just twitch out again. And I'm telling you, when you do this, it's ridiculous how good it feels if you really, truly open up to it. And it honestly, it's something that, what I'm really saying is, it's something that kind of makes you feel electric inside and warm and serious vibrations. And then it builds and builds and builds up, leading to this like huge climax where you're just shaking all over the place and your body's just going out of control on the ground, almost like a seizure that you're conscious for. And what I'm really trying to say when I say that is that that's just a full-fledged feeling of emotions without the filtration of the mind involved. In fact, I find that my mind really quiets then. And so I don't necessarily, like, I still like kind of just shake it out when I need to now that I've reactivated that reflex. So I almost do mini versions of that more often. At the same time, now that I'm more, grounded, solid, whole, complete, I'm more in my right brain all the time. And so when shit happens at the time, you better believe I'm feeling it. So being associated means I have less of those neurological ghosts in the machine pent up that I really need to like wring the fuck out. At the same time, I can tell you, like 99% of people should try them at least, or some form of somatic processing, whether it's that or something else, just to get back in their body and get out of their head. And I think once you do that, then okay, I know what it feels like. And now, instead of like always feeling like I need to plug this into my Google Calendar just to get done, it's like, oh, maybe I'll just lean on that if I ever need to, like a tool in the tool shed. But when the job's done, not done, quote unquote, but when I get there, then yeah, I'm going to just kind of live the life I need to feel that way the rest of the time.
So is that just is there different exercises, or are you just standing and shaking? What does that look like?
Some isometric holds, some wall sit type stuff, certain rocking exercises, positions, like kind of a cross between isometric holds and yoga, if you want to think about it like that way.
All right.
And for something...
and then there are videos of them. I mean, what I would do is talk to a practitioner, have them run them through you, and then it's not like someone you always have to see like a chiropractor. It is a series of exercises you can then take and implement on your own. And those are things that like I'll implement with clients too, give them as like homework a couple times a week for like almost like a training block period of X amount of weeks. And they'll have to do that in conjunction with their health and nutrition to get them, healthy, fit, and then also kind of giving them some of the biology to be able to not be anxious and be able to be calm and really just in their body. If that means freaking out, it means freaking out. And then, obviously like the right movement therapy and strength and conditioning program along with that. So, yeah, it's something anyone can do, assuming, you can, you're in even just the most basic of fitness levels of shape.
You talked about using that with your clients, and I've also heard you talk about using different practices with your clients. One thing I've heard you talk about was using the Braverman test for how to program for people, and actually how to kind of figure out what kind of psychedelics would be the best to microdose or to experiment with. Just go a little bit into the Braverman test and how you use it and the benefits you've gotten from it.
Right. So when I initially talked about that on the podcast, I had some people just like roast me after, and I mean, not really. A couple of them privately. You never use that as a clinical diagnosis. It's not clinically valid. What it is valuable in doing though is showing you, okay, well, like based on this like really like skewed answer, this person's probably kind of an upper person that's like really, anxious, X, Y, and Z. And then, this stuff isn't more important than just sitting down and having a conversation with them. It just can add to that. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, this person's sort of really anxious and very flighty and doesn't really like sitting with themselves and being alone. Okay, like maybe I shouldn't recommend X, Y, or Z, and I should recommend this. Or maybe I shouldn't recommend anything. Maybe I should recommend more of just sort of like the integration work. The other reason that you can use these various neurotransmitter tests, and usually maybe looking at a couple different ones would be helpful, you also can, could take a neurotransmitter test, but the problem there is that, like, our way of measuring neurotransmitters in the brain just is not that evolved enough to where you can make a pinpoint diagnosis. So I'm intrigued by neurotransmitter testing in the urinalysis clinical sense. At the same time, I just don't really think it's worth investing the money when you're already going to have to invest the money in, a lot of other just more essentials. So that's why I use it. I think, though, that, like, if I see someone who's a big-time upper, there's probably a chance I don't need to be giving them something that's going to like make them more anxious. And I think that, when you talk about microdosing and people having experiences getting hurt by it, it's probably, if I were to guess, something where they have a high level of glutamate in their brain, and from just like the ridiculous amount of it that's in the modern food supply, probably histamines too, which are again excitatory, almost like protective, immunoprotective, like neurotransmitters. A lot of these things that like people have that are kind of almost helping the body do continuations of fight or flight in the body, you might not want to add some stimulatory agents to that, basically. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and just when you're starting to train an athlete, besides using that for psychedelics, is that a main reason of how you kind of program for them and how you see how they're going to recover and how they're going to respond to the training stimulus you're giving them?
Yeah, not to the degree that like a Christian Thibodeau, and he's cool, I like him. Not to the degree that he does, where he's like having people test and identify as like a type 1A neurotype, which means you're going to be more likely to, do X, Y, or Z. a lot of that work that I spoke of has to do more with being able to read people and knowing that this guy is a guy who's going to sit in silence at the end of the bench on the basketball court if his coach is just sort of one of those drill instructor or drill sergeant coaches. And then what you can do is you can fold in some of these tests that let you know, okay, well, based on this, that's sort of validating what I thought about this person. Or, the reality is that I think a lot of people in the strength and conditioning world are dissociated motherfuckers who can't really read people, so they look at tests like that, and in absence of being able to read person. I like doing both if I have the option to. I also think that there's like a degree of this where, if we're just being honest, sometimes like when you're working with athletes, they're fucking the worst at reporting symptoms or if they're feeling shitty. So you kind of just need to put something in front of them that's something to do and test, almost like an exercise, that will get them to like think about things and go internal and get reconnected with themselves. Like I almost think that's the bigger value than it necessarily telling you exactly one thing. To the final piece of this is that yes, I will look at stuff like that. All of these parts I've discussed when I'm sort of like designing a training program for someone, whether it's like tying in numbers or intensity, duration, how I coach them, right? The other part of that's like some people are very visual, and this is again more Mike stuff. Some people are very visual learners. Some people are more auditory. Some people are more kinesthetic, like felt. Auditory digital. I was like, so asking, trying to like see what people respond to the best, and then meeting them at that level can help a lot too.
So
that's like some NLP type stuff.
Okay. Talking about, knowing how to read someone and getting the feedback that they're giving you or even your body's giving you. One thing I've heard you talk on, and I just wanted to kind of go into detail a little bit about the book, The Body Keeps a Score, and how you use that in your coaching and what you've gotten from that.
Yeah, my friend Ryan actually makes everyone read that book, who he works with. That book just really opened my eyes to stuff that I'd known already. It just was it's not the best thing in the world. What it is, though, is it's a really easily digestible way to see that your thoughts and emotions and the physical body and your physiology, they're sort of a feedback loop. Not that sort of, they are. And so a lot of how you treat your body is going to definitely affect your quality of life. And a lot of what might have happened to you in the past or you're currently dealing or not dealing with is almost always going to have some sort of consequence on your health. The simplest thing I like to say is if you're stressed and you have really stiff traps and maybe a lot of aches and pains in your body, like when you get stressed like that, there you go. There's a really basic version of it for anyone who doesn't really believe in this stuff. And then you have more extreme cases of trauma where some people from where I'm actually online and from where I'm from back home, they'll like actually shame fat people or people who like don't like working out and stuff. And while at the same time I work with high level professional athletes, a lot of these people they just don't know what it's like to have such an anxious state in your body where you deplete the fuck out of your brain chemicals to the point to where you might not have enough adrenals left to like fuel yourself. You might not have like proper cortisol production. You might not have the right amount of dopamine to be able to like actually do something, a goal off on the horizon in order to, have a goal off on the horizon and then do the requisite day-to-day things like working out, dieting in order to get there, And dopamine is associated with like moving or going somewhere for a reward, So I just think that a lot of these people, boy, I really forgot where I was going with that. I just think that a lot of times, like someone like that might just need to rest and relax for a while and replenish a lot of this stuff. Work in, as you put it, eat right, sleep, do a lot of the work, support the adaptive process, inner work, support the adaptive processes of the body, and then do just whatever they can basically for fitness. You know what I mean? I also, because I used to be one of them, I have like a big time, I'm going to hate on on some of these fitness types a little bit. I just have a big time, like, not suspicion. I mean, you kind of just see it for what it is. A lot of times people in that bodybuilding or fitness, like, get as big at all costs shape, or sometimes it's get as, run as many miles as you can and zone out at all cost state. A lot of it comes just from, like, feeling like you need to do that shit in order to belong. I think the amount of people who do that stuff because they love it is, they're there. It's definitely the minority, though. It's, a lot of those guys almost always come with some sort of, like, deep-seated inferiority complex they haven't really dealt with, I mean, and it's coming from someone who still thinks it's totally okay to just lift weights for vanity. I do, and function as well. But yeah.
Well, yeah, and you see.
Sorry, dude, I completely forgot what the fuck you asked me.
That's how we roll here at Airey Bros. It's funny you talk about that. Run more miles or lift more weights. You see it a lot in ultra marathoning, and even to a certain respect within the CrossFit community, where you have addicts, recovering addicts or people that are cleaning themselves up, where they trade one addiction for the other, and they go overboard on the running side or the fitness side, and they justify it because it's healthy, but it gets to a certain point where too much of anything is unhealthy. You know what I mean? Whether it's cheeseburgers,
right,
donuts, heroin, cocaine, working out, running, but then you also have these people that are now, because they quote unquote turned their life around, are now at the top of the mountain screaming, well, look at me do this, look at what I did. And sometimes it can be frustrating because you see these people and they've written a book or whatever it may be, and sometimes it's hard for people to relate to someone like us, where we've been doing this our whole lives, and it's like, oh, well, people are like, oh, well, you've done this your whole life, so I'm trying to make this change so I can relate to this person. It's like, well, you should be able to relate to me or let me lead you to where you need to go, because I have been living this way my whole life.
Yeah. I think that I agree with you, especially in a logical left brain sense. I also think that sometimes people they need to connect with someone and identify with them in order to have that happen. So you might have the best information in the world. Everyone, yes, should be able to relate to everyone, at least at a core level, at least enough to listen to them. At the same time, I know that that's not necessarily the world that we live in. A lot of people really need that emotional connection in order to go someplace else, and that's something that I've learned, still learning, It's something that you kind of, even if you can lose track of, like I did. So I think that with respect to the addicts, like a lot of times you'll see them do well in things like CrossFit, professional athletics, or you'll see a lot of people who are high-level athletes become addicts after, like Dennis Rodman, for example.
Lawrence Taylor.
And
BJ Penn.
Yeah, BJ Penn, that's a sad one. Like Lawrence Taylor, too, yeah. Remember when he broke Joe Theismann's leg on coke?
Yep.
Oh, man.
Lawrence Taylor used to be in on every play, man. That guy was legit.
Yeah, now we know why.
Now we know why, yeah. The adrenals of a superhero.
Yeah.
So a lot of times that same sort of like reward-based mentality that makes an athlete great can also really like fuck up someone's personal life, especially if they don't have an outlet for it. I think it's really important to have an outlet, and I think that sports is one of the most beautiful things you can do for that on a productivity level. Your work, day in and day out, helping other people. At the same time, you kind of need that balance, because if everything you do in your life, moving, I can't sit still, all that is about taking away the feelings, that's not good. It has to be an and situation, I also think, like, if you're ignoring half of your feelings, like if you're ignoring half of it, and women are actually better at this, men are better at just sort of being dissociated in general. Women are actually better at ignoring half of their feelings if they like need to move forward with something in life, even if it's like a short-sighted temporary thing. No, not short-sighted, but a temporary thing that like they just need to kind of experience or do temporarily, or in some cases long-term as well. With addicts, though, what you really see is a lot of a lot of people who just sort of get off the hard drug or whatever it was, and then they still have that addictive behavior present. And that's why I think the 12-step program's been great for a lot of people. Helped way more people than I've ever helped.
A lot of coffee and nicotine at those meetings, though.
Fuck yeah, man. Like, yeah, exactly. Every one of those meetings is full of sugary-ass donuts, fucking gas station coffee, and they're just okay, yeah, we can chain smoke cigarettes outside. You know what I'm saying? Like that, like, isn't that kind of just like, it's way better than what they were doing, and they need to be applauded for the progress. And at the same time, if you're the coach, you can't really be like, okay, you need to lose 100 pounds, and you've lost 20 of them, you know, or you've lost 80, you know. It's like, celebrate it, and then also, like, at least do what you can to lead the horse to water a little bit more. I also think that, and this is something I've long believed, especially once I learned about NLP, and I know, you know, NLP practitioners will echo me on this. You don't want to create a victim mentality out of a situation, and the worst thing you can do is have these people go, oh, hey, I'm Mark, and I'm an addict. It's like, okay, you're giving this dude an out to be able to be an addict for life. You're subconsciously creating an identity where it's a part where he thinks he's an addict, you know? It's like people who lose themselves in certain situations, right? They, like, even if the new situation is a good situation and it's fixable, when they make that when they see the situation presented again, they make that hard left turn in order to get out of it. And that's an example of a part too, just to use something outside of the addiction realm. So parts are they're actually kind of easy to undo if you just hear the right thing or talk to the right people. It's all about how you associate things, right? Like if you go to a place where you had a lot of negative stuff happen, that's going to feel negative for a little bit. Has nothing to do with the place itself anymore, though. And you actually can fix that in a really short amount of time if you just, you know, lean into it a little bit. What was I going to say about the addicts? I had one more point. There's definitely a biological component to it, just to throw that out there. Potentially some things with like a certain set of genes, like the DRD4 gene being one of them, certain stuff in the gut. I actually used to work for a detox center, and a friend of mine and I, former partner of mine and I at the time, were helping implement health nutrition programs and looking at the genetics of certain people in the addiction community to see like what they had in common. But yeah, basically in a nutshell, man, I just think that community leads people like part of the way and most of the way. I just think that like really trying to help them deal with their stuff when you can and when they're willing and if they want to is probably the best way to handle that kind of thing, you know?
We've talked about the right and left brain a lot today, and I had heard you talk on Bledsoe's podcast about the Soviets hiring artists and writers to kind of help and train their athletes, and I heard you say that you had a writing background, and something like that kind of spoke to me a couple years back when I found someone like Paul Chek, who was all about the athletic side of things, but bringing holistic into it. Kind of really spoke to me because as an athlete, I've always kind of felt that spiritual side, but it's not really, you know, unless you're on a football team and they're saying a prayer and you know, it's kind of like that. And not to bash anyone who does that, but to me, that's always been corny. But to kind of connect the two, right? To connect the body and the spirit, that seems like to be a space that you're in. And as I said before, you're a writer. So just go into how you kind of connect the two.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, if I said that I had all the answers for this or anyone's problems, I'd be a bullshitter. I mean, a lot of what I do is help make people aware and then just have the conversations with them that almost get to help them to answer their own questions for themselves is really the best way I think I could be of service to someone. And yeah, there are definitely left brain ways I support that through nutrition, certain supplementation, and then, you know, getting them back in their body with moving, or again, if it's a pro athlete, you know, we'll breach some of that stuff. And at the same time, they're on a specific, like we talked about before the show came on, you know, like a specific strength and conditioning regimen, you know, maybe some of that, you know, the speed of sport, you know, Marinovich kind of work blended with some of my own stuff, blended with some new fit stuff. So the way I do it is sort of, I call it holistic health or functional medicine, quote unquote, meets athletic performance. And I really think that kind of everybody is like an athlete at some level. And I also think that, everybody's been through some type of shit, or has some sort of like human condition hole that we all have, like walking around. I think it's important to just be there for people and also help people, make people aware of their own shit where you see it. And a lot of it's just telling the truth, dude. Like, I've lost clients or turned them off because I've just sort of been like, okay, well, you do realize you're not doing this, or you are doing this because of this. And that's sort of the place that I come from now. And if it means sort of confronting people about their own stuff. And I say it with love, but at the same time, like, I'm not doing them any service if I don't say it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm an island of reality in a sea of diarrhea sometimes with people is how I feel. But yeah, man, I just try to deliver value from every angle, right? Like, so nutrition, strength and conditioning, movement, their mind-body piece is custom to the individual. It might be like getting an inner city kid meditating. It might be getting a pro athlete, working with someone for some visualization stuff, like my friend Mike Franco of Mental Buckets. Just stuff like that, maybe trauma release exercises. Maybe someone, you can't legally recommend psychedelics in my position, though people who are interested in that, I can provide education on what it does and, what I would do if I was in their, situation. And it was me, not them. And then sometimes from there that, they might do some of these things to help tune their nervous system, to help let go of things, as you mentioned earlier, so that they can perform better. So I tried to give some like concrete examples there, but in a nutshell, it's basically just looking at everything from their environment, their relationships, all the way to left brain things like light, nutrition, stuff like that. And then just looking at how someone's anxiety or personality trait or X, Y, or Z is playing out in the world, and then looking at like some of their labs and looking at some of their like health intakes and their lifestyle and being like, okay, well this sort of biochemical imbalance is not the only reason why you're like that. You're like that because you're like that, but it's probably making things harder on you. And how can I wave and weave some things to help you feel better, help you perform at a high clip, win a world title, be able to show up for soccer practice for your kids after working a 10-hour day,
With your client base, is it all walks of life across the board? Or are you specifically just working with athletes? I know you had some stuff going on with the kids in Compton. Are you still rolling with that?
Yeah, man. I work with. I'm actually in there right now. It's like unincorporated LA.
Was that some of the background noises we were hearing before?
Yeah. I did as best as I could to get some isolation today, but yeah, there's always some music going on, stuff like that. So I work with a lot of student athletes, a lot of inner city kids. I work with high-end executives, like type A high achievers, high performers, and a lot of that's in the health nutrition space. A lot of them have come to me for the psychedelic stuff. The kids, I just keep it simple. I just, have that rapport with them where, I genuinely care about them, so it's not like something I think about consciously doing. I just talk to them about their life and try to be there for them as a mentor and friend as much as I can. And, if we do something, it might be something basic like meditating and just getting them to breathe. And then I work with professional athletes as well. I work with some UFC fighters, high-level MMA fighters, some high-level developing athletes, like whether that means college or professional in other sports, a lot of basketball players mainly, and some fighters. And I would say mainly it's those plus executives.
Do you find...
I used to kind of try to niche to people. I mean, the way I look at it now is I have some gifts, and if I can help someone and they're willing to be helped, then I should help them instead of try to do one specific thing.
And is one more rewarding than the other? How are kids in Compton receiving you when you're asking them to meditate or to do some breath work?
So the kids in Compton, how they respond to some of this stuff is not great, if I'm being honest, in the beginning, so I don't force it on them. I just eventually, usually I just get to know them first, and then maybe eventually I'll let them know, like, guys like, you know, Kobe and Jordan and a lot of these high-level athletes all do this stuff. And so at that age, you kind of, whether it's healthy eating or that, you know, if you tie it to athletic performance, fitness, them achieving their goals, it being cool, a lot of them tend to want to gravitate in that direction. I also think just listening to them as kids helps a ton too, and helps you have a relationship with them to when they're gonna listen to you, you know.
Yeah, I was.
So you
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I coached high school cross country, wrestling, and track and field for 11 years, and it can be very frustrating, but it's a beautiful thing when they buy in and they get it, and then when the parents start to get it and everyone is all in, and then it's just that snowball effect and things start rolling. It's a beautiful thing to get them at that age where you can, you know, really kind of impact their lives. And when I first started, I was very goal results specific, and then as I've matured and got older, it became more about giving these athletes and these individuals a skill set so that they can take this with them, whether they continue to do this practice and they can do that for a lifelong, or they've just grown up and become men or women and have this skill set to go out into the real world.
Yeah, that's real good work. I mean, the fact that you did that, I mean, you probably touched a lot of people that way. That's more important than anything. You know, it's more important than any specific exercise or way of training or anything like that. I mean, that's the most important thing. And it might sound corny, but it's the truth, you know, and it's the truth. It's one of those things where, you know, and I, in some ways, I'm looked at as a sports science guy because I'm into some of that stuff. At the same time, I don't want to miss the forest, the whole entirety of the forest, because I'm looking at a tree. So I don't just want to look at performance metrics or stuff like that. You know, it's a lot of simple, like I'm a huge fan of looking at performance metrics. At the same time, I also think like seeing them develop as people is more rewarding. And at the end of the day, you're going to see more wins, less losses, better stats, you know, more games available instead of being injured. Like that. Those are the things that, you know, the head coach is going to want to care about anyways. And that's going to get you rapport with the head coach and the strength and conditioning coach and get everybody on the same page. You know, I think just unity there helps.
Yeah, when everybody does better, everybody does better.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and then winning cures everything. You know, I do think head coaches need to kind of listen to the strength and conditioning coaches a little bit more. At the same time, I think strength and conditioning coaches, even though they might actually be the most important hire that a team can make, in some ways, or the training staff, medical staff, at the end of the day, it's the head coach's program, and that's just how it is, you know? It's like, you know, I don't try to change why birds fly. Same kind of thing. It's how it is, and you're going to ultimately have to be part of their program. Or if you're independent like me, you're going to have to work with them, you know, and you might have to, like, pull away from what you wanted to do today with an athlete or athletes, and then do a different workout or shave off some volume or intensity in order to give them a workout that they can actually adapt to.
Couldn't agree more with that. We see the worst case of a head coach. We've been checking out season 4, Last Chance U, and it's cringeworthy if you haven't seen it yet, to see the way that Coach Brown interacts with his individuals and his coaching staff. But
oh no, dude! I mean, I've watched the first 2 seasons. I haven't seen the most recent season of that. I mean, I've seen a lot of that in the space. What's nice about me is that, you know, like I said, I have a shaved head. I have tattoos that go up to my neck, and so like the coaches, like they're just like, oh yeah, this guy's the old school guys, like this guy's gonna be tough on the people, and so the same stuff that like makes me an alien in the health, wellness, like psychedelic space is the stuff that makes me fit in there. Meanwhile, on the back end, I'm the guy being like sensitive with the kids and stuff like that, you know, and you know, they're like, oh, this guy, you know, he's fit, he's got muscles, he's gonna like whoop their ass, and then they come in here and they're like, oh wow, this guy cares about them, whether it's like, you know, injury prevention and their biomechanics and everything, all the way to just the meditation, and then I'll whoop their ass. You know what I'm saying? Like in the right right way that they can actually appropriately handle.
Yeah, we love it. We love everything you brought on today, Matt. We really appreciate you coming on. We want to let you get out here. Before we do, if you have any social media, anything people want to get a hold of you, get some more information from some of the stuff we talked about, if you want to put all that stuff out here now, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, and I've my shameless plugs, dude. Yeah, so you can go to rewireperformance.com. You can find me online on Instagram at rewireperformance. I really only use Twitter to be funny and talk shit, although all my Instagram stuff gets amongst friends or whatever. All my Instagram stuff gets shared there, though, so you're not really missing anything by following that, though I do have one. Those are the two main places. I do mentor and coaches. I do consult with coaches too. So if people are looking for that type of guidance, I can help. I also obviously help everyday people. I do work remotely as well as in person. So whether you want to train in person, whether you want to do an individual consultation, a lot of times when I'm working with everyday people, I'm really good at actually getting them to be able to not need me by the end of it, or maybe only need to sit down with me and do one consult a year after we do kind of an initial intensive program. So that's generally how I work with people. Obviously with athletes, they kind of always need to have someone's hands on their programming because of the off-season development. I just appreciate you guys having me on. This by far is my favorite podcast that I've ever done.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That means a lot. Like Richie said, we've listened to you a couple times and had an impact on us, and we wanted to have you on. So thank you very much, Matt.
Oh, yeah. Well, never let anyone big league you or anything like that. I mean, all this stuff, it's almost like the Grammys, dude. It's just a bunch of snobs patting themselves on the back. So I try to come on here and just, be myself and be relatable and not be some robot anymore. I had a lot of fun, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We had a blast, too, and we appreciate your kind words. And, thank you very much. We can't wait to put this one out for the people.
Yeah, definitely let me know when you guys do. I don't know if you guys have social media as well, but tag me in it and stuff, and then I can reshare it.
Absolutely. We'll put everything together. We got some promo clips and stuff. We're probably looking at 5-6 weeks from now. We've got a couple in the bank. We've just been trying to stockpile as we get ready to go into the school year here. But we'll get all that information to you. Jimmy will send it over to you with the links and everything. And again, thank you very much. We appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Stay classy.
Yeah, buddy. Take care.
Bye.